Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, Himalaya, Ghana, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Jocelyn Rish. She is here to celebrate Battle of the Butts. Before we invite Jocelyn into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by the Adventures of Harry and Friends, the beautiful picture book series written by Sarah Belisa Tucker. Are you tired of asking your child to pick up their toys? Harry and the Broken Toy is popular with parents experiencing the same crazy mess. Buy your copy today at Barnes & Noble or Amazon and help your child become more responsible today. Harry and the Broken Toy is book 4 and the 7th book, The Adventures of Harry and Friends series. It's a wonderful series that will inspire your kids' imagination, help them develop their moral compass, and prepare them for life's real challenges. You can find out more by going to theadventuresofharryandfriends.com. Join us right now from the beautiful state of South Carolina. Our guest is here today to celebrate a great picture book. It's called Battle of the Butts. Please welcome to the show, Jocelyn Rish. Hey, Jocelyn, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on. Butts is one of those words that if you're in front of an audience of 7 or 8 or 10-year-olds, especially guys, you're going to have them and they're going to start laughing.
Yes. And that was why I knew this was going to be such a fun picture book.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about Battle of the Butts, please.
Okay. Well, Battle of the Butts is about 10 different animals that do weird things with their butts. Anything from swimming with farts, kind of, sort of, not really, to catapulting their poop, to actually breathing through their butts. So there's actually 2 animals in the book that can breathe through their butts.
I'm at a loss for words. So, as hard as it is to believe, this is actually a STEM book.
It is. It's got chemistry, biology, physics. There's a section that has a little bit of physics stuff in it. That's the caterpillar that catapults its poop. It's very talking about the physics of how the thing comes across and launches the poop.
This is going to be a more difficult conversation than I thought. Okay, we started with the caterpillar who catapults his poop. First off, how did we find out about that?
Okay, well, I'll take you back to the beginning of how I got inspired to write this book.
Okay.
I'm addicted to Twitter. It's probably not something I should admit, so it was late one night. I should have been sleeping, writing, doing, anything productive. But I was on Twitter doom scrolling, and this cute little tweet popped up with a graphic of a manatee, the cutest little manatee, and it says, manatees can control their buoyancy through farting. That's a thing you know now. And I was like, that cannot possibly be true. I'm like, they're basically saying they swim with farts. I mean, not really. But I was like, that can't be true. So I Googled it, and it was true. And the luckiest thing for me is the Google search brought up all these other animals that do unusual things with their booties. And so I started reading all these things, and I'm just like, whoa. I never knew about any of these things. And I love animals. I've heard a lot about animals, and I never heard of a single one of these things. So I'm like, okay, I feel like there's something here. And so that's how, and so when I started researching, I would Google animals that do weird things with their butts, animals that do funny things with their butts, animals who have weird poop, animals who have unusual farts, just all these different terms of poop, fart, weird, strange, unbelievable. and ended up pulling up, a bunch of, like BuzzFeed articles and Wired articles that, put these little aggregated things together. And so then that helped me find the animals I needed to pursue. And so then I would go to the science journals, the science journals and the research papers, and do the actual in-depth research on the how, when, and why, and that kind of thing. So that's how I got it all.
So Battle of the Butts is scientifically approved. I don't
yes,
know.
And officially, because once it's sold, I wanted to make sure, because you take these articles that are 50 pages long, just full of just dense science, and you're trying to crunch it down to 100-word section each, or I guess it's more than 100 words, but it was small sections that are digestible for kids. I want to make sure it hadn't messed up, shrinking it down. So I contacted scientists. So I contacted an expert in each of the animals in the book and asked them if they'd be willing to read the section on that animal to make sure that it was still accurate. And so that was really cool, reaching out to the scientists, and they were all excited about a book about butts and and getting their feedback. So that was a lot of fun.
Now, how do we go about finding those scientists? Did you go to the University of South Carolina and see if they had a butt biology department or something?
Well, for the first round, for Battle of the Butts, what I did was it was a website called 500 Women Scientists. And it's way more than 500 women scientists, but it's for women scientists who want to be contacted. Usually people in the media, journalists, everything, they go to male scientists for quotes and that type of thing. And they're like, hey, we do science too. And so they are specifically putting themselves out there as experts. And so I went to this website, and so I typed in manatee, and I found a woman who was an expert in manatees. And I typed, so for each one, I would type in and find the science, and then contact the scientist and asked if she'd be willing to read for me.
Wonderful. That's so very, very cool. I'm just imagining two scenarios. Number one, me reading this book as a middle school kid, and I would have been obnoxious. I would have been carrying it around and go, yo, look, teacher, this animal propels itself in the water through farts. It's a fart-powered propulsion system. And the other would be reading this with my son when he was 7 or 8 years old, and talk about the fun and for that matter, my daughter would have had a blast with the two.
Yes. It's been so fun because I don't have kids myself, but I've done a lot of the World Read Aloud Day and Read Across America. I was able to connect with a bunch of classrooms virtually, and that was so much fun. I can't wait till in-person visits are a little more safe again, because it was so much fun hearing them just giggle, just break down to giggles, every time you said fart, poop, it was so much fun.
Well, that brings up a subject that's been in the news recently. A vice principal down in Mississippi decided that he was asked to read, and he read a book called I Need a New Butt, which I've heard excerpts from, and it just sounds like a fun book. Yes. But he was fired.
Yes.
He lost his job. So I guess the first question is, what's your reaction? What was your reaction when you heard that this educator, who I guess was loved at the school, lost his job because he dared read a butt book?
I know. It was one of those things. Already I was upset and angry and about all the other bannings that are happening. But then the vice principal actually got fired for reading a book about butts. It was just, I was like, what? Why? And then it made me nervous. I hate to be selfish about it, but I'm like, a big part of an author's living is made through doing school visits. I'm like, if we're not allowed to say butt anymore or fart, I was like, I won't be able to go into schools and read my book. But just the ridiculousness of it is just, the word butt, kids love butts. And I've read the book. I hadn't read it before, but I've since read it. And it's just so, there's nothing. It's just saying, I guess just the word butt. I don't know. There's nothing controversial about the book at all. I don't know. And I know his hearing is actually today. His hearing is today. I think it's this morning to, see if he can get his job back. So wishing him the best of luck. Although I don't know, it's one of those things. Is that even a place for him? Clearly,
Well, I was.
They don't appreciate his humor, so.
No. And I was speaking to one of my wife's best friends, who is a former principal. And her thing was, he's the vice principal, and there's just some different standard. And I don't know. I've traveled around schools for 33 years doing educational magic shows, and there was a time in my career where I would open with a really cute, what I thought was a really cute joke. Jocelyn, what's invisible and smells like carrots?
Bunny fart.
Bunny farts, exactly, bunny farts. And it would always get a big laugh. But the one place it didn't get a big laugh is right north of you in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. It did. The kids laughed, but boy, they thought, we shouldn't be laughing about this. And the principal was in the back of the auditorium. I'm like, I ain't getting invited back to this.
Oh.
But I guess it brings up this the very reality of the fact that we live in this really diverse country where people have different standards and different perspectives on things. And what might be harmless in one school setting may be completely thought to be inappropriate in a school a few blocks away.
Yes.
How, as an author, because I know I have my own challenges with this, how, as an author, do you approach this, or have you not had to think about it before this time?
I hadn't had to think about it before this time. This is my first book, so I haven't even, and it only was released in November, so I'm just getting out there. And then that's why seeing this happen, it was a little scary. And so, the part of me is like, I can't let that affect how I write. I'm going to write books that I think kids will enjoy. I'm writing for the kids. Mm-hmm. I want them to have fun. And learn science through fun. That's, for me, that's what a huge part of this is, having fun and learning. And even if you're not learning anything, having fun reading. You have to enjoy reading to do more of it, to get better at it, to then continue on and have success in life. And so I want to write books that kids love to read, no matter what the subject is. And I guess I'm going to focus on that. And that's all I can control. I can't control what the school boards, school administrations, and I guess the nice thing about Battle of the Butts is it's right there in the title. I'm not surprising anybody.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
They will either invite me because they're fine with it, or they won't. So It's not like I'm not going to pop it as a surprise.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good statement. Obviously, if somebody invites you in to read Battle of the Butts, so because you wrote Battle of the Butts, they know what to expect. When I show up in North Carolina and I start my magic show off with a joke about bunny farts, well, they weren't expecting that, and that was bad on me. It's interesting that you took this thing that is so funny to 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and you were able to use that to spark their imagination and interest in biology and in the STEM fields. Have you had any reaction? Have you had a parent, reach out to you, or a teacher reach out to you and say, I couldn't get my kid to even think about science. Now all of a sudden he's all about butt science.
Not quite that big yet, but I did, it was some of the school visits, the kids wanted, then after the Q&A, they had all these questions about digestion and, how does this poop and how does that poop? And I was like, well, I'm going to need to do some more research before going into these schools because these kids are, have way more in-depth questions than I would have guessed. But I've had several parents and teachers say that their kids just were like Google, all day Googling, what does this fart and how does this, and so that's very cool to me. The kids are so intrigued by the science behind it, they go looking for more information. And I think that's very cool.
Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned the kids going Googling, and you were sharing how you started this and doing the research. And I am just wondering what the Google AI did when it just noticed you Googling all this butt information. And I'm curious as to what kind of ads it sent your way based on those researches.
Luckily, I haven't got anything too weird.
So, I guess one of the follow-up questions is there follow-up? Are we going to have Battle of the Butts 2?
Well, they're actually coming November 8th of this year. We're going to have Battle of the Brains. We're moving from the hind end to the front end.
Okay.
And we're going to have Battle of the Brains. And so the cover was just revealed last week, and I love it. David Crichton-Pester was the illustrator for Butts, and he is the illustrator for Brains as well. And he did another fabulous job. And so that is next on the battle landscape. And my agent and I just recently pitched a number of other ideas for battle books to my editor, so we'll see. And one of those was Battle of the Butts number 2. So, because I do have at least 10 more animals that I can go through.
Excellent. Wow, there's going to be a lot of you're going to be have some fun with that number 2 related to Battle of the Butts. I don't want to go too much into it.
Yes.
What was the weirdest, you mentioned a couple, what was the weirdest butt science fact that you discovered as you were writing Battle of the Butts?
There were so many. I mean, it was all just, what? But I guess I have to give the weirdest to the sea cucumber, because its butt does so many different things, because it's one of the ones that can breathe through its butt. It can eat through its butt. It can, expel its internal organs through its butt to get away if it's being attacked, and they grow back. And then it also has, his butt is used as a hotel by other fish. They are fish that live in the butts of sea cucumbers. So I thought that was pretty strange.
Welcome to the hotel, sea cucumber butt. I know that's not going to be a song.
Yeah.
Well, this is, boy, I tell you, this, I love this idea. I think to get a 7 or 8-year-old even to think about a sea cucumber, is incredible. How else are you going to do it but to, they can breathe out.
Talk about their butts. And they're a great animal. They help clean the sand on the sea floor. That's part of when they digest food, is they're cleaning the sand. So they're very helpful for the ocean at large. So, you learn more about them and what they do and how they help the ecosystem. And it's very cool.
Did you always aspire to be a children's author?
Yes and not. Like, it's not something I knew I wanted to do as a kid. I'm not one of those writers who knew from the time they were 6 years old they wanted to be a writer. I always enjoyed stories. I loved reading. You couldn't find me without a book in my hand. So I've always loved stories. And I had some successes in school, different contests I won, but it was never one of those things that clicked, oh, you should write. And it wasn't until my mid-20s, and I was working at a software company, and I was reading a lot, and I saw a magazine article about the Institute for Children's Literature about writing for kids. I was like, I read YA all the time. I mostly read young adult books. And so I was like, maybe I should try. So I applied, got in, took the course, loved it. And that's where it started. And so for the longest, I've always been a fiction girl, fiction all the time. And so I was writing young adult novels, middle grade novels, and getting close, but never quite getting there. And I didn't think I was a nonfiction person at all. I had tried a couple and they were terrible. And I was like, clearly I'm not a nonfiction writer. But when I had this idea for Butts, I was like, I have to try it, even though I'm very, I don't feel comfortable writing nonfiction. I don't know what I'm doing. I felt like I had to give it a go. And so I stepped out of my comfort zone. So it ended up being my first published book. So that's when my advice I'm always giving people. I'm like, step outside your comfort zone. Try writing something you never think you'd write. So it's been like 20 years that I've wanted to be a writer, but it wasn't from the time I was a kid. So I've been trying on and off for 20 years to be a writer. And it wasn't until I tried something completely new and scary that I found success.
Yeah. And so now that you've written this first nonfiction book, and it's obviously it's successful and kids are digging it, is this something? I know that the next book is Battle of the Brains is coming out, and maybe Battle of the Butts too. Do you see yourself really kind of staying in this lane for the future?
I think so. Like now my brain has totally flipped that anytime I read something, I'm like, ooh, how could that be a kid's, how can we use that to teach kids something? And so I'm like on a bunch of newsletters now, the Nat Geo newsletter and the Scientist newsletter, and I'm always reading these little articles. And how can I turn this into a book or article? that's fun and can teach kids something. So I think, it's something I'm going to try for a while. I still would love to get my fiction out there because I still love fiction and love writing it. But yeah, I've been having so much fun with it because I learn as I research. And it's fun.
Yeah. Well, it is fun. And it's really fun to turn kids on to learning.
Yes.
Entertaining them with a great story, getting them to think, teach a lesson with a great story. Wonderful. But if you can also at the same time, flip the switch inside a kid, and the Battle of the Butts could be that book that launches a career in science. One of your readers may grow up to be the person who solves acid reflux. I don't.
That would be so amazing. I would be like, if 20 years from now, a kid walked up to me like, I went to science because of Battle of the Butts. I would just start sobbing. That would be a mess.
Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Battle of the Butts and find out more about you.
It's jocelynrish.com everywhere. Well, it's Jocelyn Rish everywhere, Twitter, Instagram. And my website is jocelynrish.com, JOCELYNRISH. And on my website, I have links to where you can find the book. I actually have a little a springtime activity sheet people can download right now that's spring and butts themed. It's Blossoms and Booties, I'm calling it. So it's a little word search. And so, so that's Jocelyn Rish everywhere, basically.
Blossoms and Booties. I shall have to download that. I know some elderly folks who like to do word puzzles to keep their mind fresh. That keep their mind fresh. We've had a really fun time speaking about butts and science and animals that propel themselves through the water, and talking to the author of Battle of the Butts, Jocelyn Rish. Hey, Jocelyn, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. I appreciate it.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Jacob Sager-Weinstein. He'll be joining us from the United Kingdom to celebrate how to remember everything. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you are an author, I would love for you to remember readingwithyourkids.com. Readingwithyourkids.com. Authors click here button at the top of the page. That's the place to go to find out how we can help you celebrate your book and tell the entire world all about it. Being an author, it's really, really difficult. And a lot of people think that once the book is written and published, your job is over. Your job is actually just beginning. As an author, you are the CEO of your book business. And part of your book business is marketing and promoting, letting the world know all about it. It's a difficult job to do, especially for someone who wasn't expecting it. We would love to help you. Reading with Your Kids can help celebrate your book by having you as a guest on the podcast. Being a guest is fun. It's easy. And it doesn't cost you a thing. And it gives you the chance in a long-form conversation to tell the world why they should check out your book and why they should be interested in you as an author. It's a great way to build your brand. You can also submit your book to our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read panel. And if they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. And with that status comes a number of really powerful tools that you can use on your website or in social media to let folks know that your book is worthy of their consideration. You can also have us promote your book through commercials on the podcast, through messages to our 83,000 plus social media followers, and display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. That's our monthly promotion program. And you can find out all about that and more by going to readingwithyourkids.com, clicking on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, scrolling on down. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we'll start by thanking our guest, Jocelyn Rish. Please be sure to check out Battle of the Butts. Also want to thank our sponsor, The Adventures of Harry and Friends by Sarah Tucker. Please go to theadventuresofharryandfriends.com. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.